Welcome to Business Coaching Secrets with Karl Bryan. If you want to attract new high-end coaching clients, fill live events, and build a wildly profitable coaching practice where business owners pay, stay, and refer, you've come to the right place. In this podcast, Karl provides his keys to the kingdom for finding and signing high-paying clients and building the coaching business of your dreams. Here we go.
Hey. I hope you're doing good. Karl Bryan coming at you. Another edition of Business Coaching Secrets. I'm here sans my boy Road Dog today, but he has texted me, so he sends his apologies and he sent me a few questions. So, actually, I know what the first question is. Okay. So his first question, last week I was doing some AI predictions. So he says, talk to me about the reaction you got since last week and your AI predictions. So people get pretty revved up about AI, I'll tell you. It's a little bit like politics, frankly. But anywho, okay, so how am I going to answer this? So the person that says that they know what is to come, like as far as AI, right? Predictability or predictably is the least likely to know. Okay, I want to be clear on that. The louder that they are shouting, I'm going to dare say, the more clueless that they are. And yes, there's anomalies and exceptions, but no doubt you get what I mean, right? Like, look, I would go to the financial markets is what I was thinking about. Like Warren Buffett, one of the greatest business and investment minds of all time. And he will tell you point blank, I don't know what will happen. And anyone that tells you they know what's going to happen is either lying to you or lying to themselves, right? Like there wasn't a single expert during the COVID dealio and the pandemic that predicted real estate and stock prices were going to shoot through the roof and go to the stars, right? Yet they did. Experts and the general public basically got it wrong. And that is something that I promise you is like 1,000 times as predictable as what the AI that we do not know what is to come is to come. That make any sense? So nobody starting with me knows where AI is going to take us, is my opinion. We do know that it is going to be disruptive on steroids, so nobody's denying that. The smartest and the least informed, all going to agree on that one. And I'll tell you, after speaking to countless AI superstars over the last short period of time, if you ask me what's the truth, I'll tell you this: we all become peasants in the AI world to come. But the question is, when is that to come, right? Like one of my best buds is a big dog at NVIDIA, right? He's been there since the early days. He knows Jensen Huang, very well. Their kids play together. There's no question that all machines will become autonomous. But the question is when, right? Like my buddy worked at NVIDIA, he's like a big dog on the self-driving cars, right? Well, here's the kicker. He stopped working on them like years ago. Why? Because they worked and his job was practically complete on the self-driving cars, right? Because he's a big timer. So they moved him onto bigger, badder projects, i.e., he's working with robots and AI at a significantly higher level. So self-driving cars are still not on the roads for the most part, despite being pretty much quote unquote done years ago. Why? Look, unpredictable things and difficulty of just getting over the last hurdle, like one death on the road and the whole project basically goes upside down. Like there's technical glitches, there's regulation, regulatory concerns, it's public trust. These are the last hurdles and they're basically there. There were like 50 deaths, I would dare say, in the last hour on the roads. And like around the world with people at layman like mere mortals like you and I at the wheel, and they're crashing left, right, and center. But one accident on an autonomous car, and the project's upside down. And things that cause accidents are like what? Unusual road layouts, strange driver behavior, pedestrians, cyclists, animals, debris. I don't know, poor weather, bad lighting would have to be in there, right? These are the same things that mess up an autonomous an autonomous vehicle, right? So like, are autonomous lawnmowers going to mow your lawn? The answer is yes. The question is, when will that happen? And Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, would tell you that, he doesn't know any better than you do. That said, like, it's borderline imminent, but it could be quite some time away, right? Um, but I will tell you that the big timers in the AI space will all tell you very turbulent times. We all agree on that. AI is going to disrupt everything that we're doing. I spoke to a very smart guy. I think I mentioned this last week. I asked him what the world looks like in 5 years, and he goes, the capitulation of capitalism. I'm like, oh my gosh. So again, I'm not just gonna, oh, okay, great, the capitulation of, capitalism, and then move on with my day like everything's falling apart. I said, so where do you come up with that? 20% unemployment causes societal unrest. I agreed with that. And then he goes, 25% unemployment leads to potential for serious civil unrest, right? Where, situations escalate a little beyond our control. And once that toothpaste is out of the tube, it ain't going back in. And that's when he perked my ears up a little bit. And I went, okay, all right. I can see where your viewpoint comes from. Again, do I agree? No. That said, there's some turbulent times, and I am going to do what you should do. I'm going to keep my ear to the ground and, keep watching, adjusting, adapting, etc. And like, what are the areas of concern when you speak to people, that are working on robots that are literally chained up at night? And again, they chain them up at night for, the reason that you think they chain them up at night for. Like, it's freedom. They're worried about accountability. It's human connection. It's equality. Its quality is going to be redefined. Economic reality is going to be redefined in a fabulous way, in a negative way. Truthfully, it's going to come to pass, and we're going to see it all unfold, and we will all know in 10 years. But innovation in business, again, there's going to be power struggles on steroids, and everything's going to be tested, everything's going to be changed. But nobody knows the order. Nobody knows the timing. That's what I'm trying to get at. So what do? You just keep on going and growing. Keep your ear to the ground. What do I know? It's going to take longer than planned, and it's going to be unpredictable and have disruptions that you nor I nor the big dogs are going to be able to predict, right? So, as we evolve, it's just going to be one of those things. And the news, well, here's what I do know also. The news and the influencers are going to frighten you the entire journey and making out like it's just around the corner. Why are they doing that? Because they want to steal your attention. They want to steal your focus. And ultimately, quite frankly, why did they do that? Because they may or may not want to get their hand on your wallet. Educate yourself on AI is what I would call your only answer. Don't overthink it. Don't let it overwhelm you. Just understand. So the way I see AI is gasoline. It is not the vehicle. Yes, some, AI businesses are going to start up and go absolutely to the moon. It's already happening. At the same time, for everyone that goes to the moon, there's going to be 99 that are going to fall over. Again, arbitrary number. Don't hold me to it. But where you really want to think about is, as a business coach, you want to use AI to accelerate everything that you're doing. You want to use AI to accelerate everything that your clients do. And you want to use it as gasoline. You want to use it as turbo for the car. It is not the car, right? So again, you want to see it integrated into day-to-day life. You want to see it integrated into your business. You want to see it integrated into your relationships with your clients, etc. It doesn't become the relationship. It is gasoline, not the vehicle. Anyways, that's my answer. I'm sticking to it longer than planned, but there you go. That's the first question. Hang on. Okay, so Road Dog has written here, because he knew that one might have been a little bit of a rabbit hole. You've got to follow that up with your Zen. So there you go. I will follow it up with my Zen thought. And I'll tell you, we had a little bit of sad news. An old girlfriend from high school passed away. She was actually my very first kiss. It was actually funny. We caught up years later and we kissed again. And it was like, oh wow, we kind of kissed the same. It was kind of weird. There's a Nickelback song, and it says Kim's the first girl I kissed. And whenever I hear that line, I often think of Nicole. So, anyways, I had a very good friend pass away. Nicole, may she rest in peace. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful soul, truly. Yeah, here's what I thought about like after her passing, right? Also note that I missed her last message on Facebook, which I'm not going to lie, it's a little bit devastating in this moment, but um, yeah, bummer. But here's my thoughts of her passing. Like beautiful soul, and it's like you don't like obviously it's pretty in your face, right? Somebody from high school passes away, and it's like your brain, it's so insanely primitive, so much so that you don't know the difference between perception and reality, right? So your brain can't tell the difference between something you perceive to have happened and then something that has actually happened. Like if you think about that, it's kind of crazy, right? And like Nicole was the kind of person, well, first of all, she had a baby very, very young at the age of 18. And by the way, I set her up with the guy who she had the baby with. So there you go. Shout out to Sean. Um, but anyway, so having a baby very young at life at 18, the truth is that she missed out on some finer things in life. And I dare say that she knew by making, having a baby at a young age that she would be doing that. And there was a lot of people, around her saying, look, you've got other options and there's other things that you can think about doing here. And she said, no, I'm having the baby. I'm looking after the baby. I'm raising the baby. And that's that, right? His name is Aaron. And, I really respected that. So did my dad, by the way. And he mentioned that many a times because, again, we were pretty good. We weren't dating or anything at that stage. We were like friends, right? And again, grew up. We went to school from like grade 1 to grade 12 together, put it in perspective. But anyway, um, but here, there's 4 things. So did she have a meaningful life? Which I believe that she did, right? But 4 things that basically, if you want to have a meaningful life, you need to have, or you do have. Something to love would be number 1. Something to look forward to, something to work on, and then something to believe in. Right. And then I'd ask you, understanding that we're all here for such a short time, or, some shorter and going to be longer than others. Do you have something to love? Do you have that thing that you're looking forward to? Do you have something you're working on that you're passionate about? Do you have something that you believe in? Right. And again, if you don't feel like you have those 4 things totally dialed in, here's what I would recommend. I would take away, quote unquote, the entertainment, right? Your life should be immeasurably more exciting to you than watching the Yankees, watching the Cowboys, watching the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? Like back in our ancestors' days, if they wanted to control people, they did 2 things. 1, they made sure you had food, water, and shelter. 2, they gave you something to be entertained by, right? Why do they do that? If they know that if they're entertaining you, like look over here, look over here, look over here, then there's no, you will not be questioning the other stuff that's going on, the higher level decisions, like who's in charge, right? Like what people are in charge and what are they doing? And who will educate us? Who will educate our children? Who will educate our children's children? What's the curriculum that we're going to follow? What are the topics that we're going to educate on? And how is that going to affect, me? How's that going to affect my family? How's that going to affect my children? How's that going to affect my children's children? Right? Like just thinking about the higher level, the higher level things. Let's look over here, look over here. Like, let's face it, Fox News, and I'm sure you've seen the movie the way I have. Look, it's entertainment, right? As much as it is news, and they don't hide that. And why do they entertain you? They entertain you to distract you, right? They distract you so that they can take from you, quite frankly. So like stop. So, halt the entertainment if you felt like, you need to dial in. And what would you dial in on? You dial in on your own family, your own business, your own finances. And once you got your family, your business, your financial foundation in place, then double down on the first row tickets to the Dallas Cowboy game or the box seats to the Yankees, etc. Right. But be careful to be entertained into not paying attention, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um, Better you think like, will it actually matter? And the answer is 100% it will. That extra time focused in on what you need to be dialing in on, look, that will make a big impact. Like it's Mother Teresa has a very famous quote. I'm sure I'm going to make a meal of it, but it's something to the effect of never underestimate the impact the love one person Never impact one person's love and the impact that it can have on the world. Again, making a little bit of a meal of it, right? But at the end of the day, one person loving and putting love out there can have a ripple effect in a very, very positive way, according to Mother Teresa. And on that note, like, there's something else I was going to talk about in Zen, but again, very unzen. But like when you're speaking, I had this conversation this morning with somebody. It's like you're speaking to your spouse about money. Don't tell her how to do it. Tell her, no, speak with her. And by the way, husband or wife or whatever the case may be, right? But agree with her on why you want to do it, not how to do it, but agree with her on why you want to do it. Why is so much more important, so much more motivating than the how. And often the how gets, sometimes in a long-term relationship can feel a little bit like I'm getting told what to do, and then I'll let you decide if your partner in crime likes the idea of you kind of, you know what I mean, feeling a little bit spoken to about something, which in many relationships, remember, marriages break up over a lack of money, over a lack of love, times 1,000. I write that literally on the bottom of every single one of my daily emails because I absolutely believe it to be true. In fact, the stats back that up big time. So translation, money can be a little bit of a sensitive issue. Right. So again, it's talking with, it's the why versus the how. And by the way, do the same thing with your clients, right? Remember, saving money and going through an itemized P&L is mind-numbingly unexciting, and I get that. But it's one of the smartest things that they could ever do, you could ever do. It's something everybody should be doing. But 90% of businesses fail, and 90% fail for a reason. Why? Because the boring stuff just doesn't get done, and the Facebook ad campaigns and the social media posts getting worked on to do. It's sexy and it's more exciting, so that's what they gravitate to. Good or bad idea, I'll let you decide. But anyway, so again, my dear friend Nicole, though, may she rest in peace. And for you, I hope that you have something to love, something to look forward to, something that you are working on, that you're passionate about, and then you've got something that you can believe in. Okay, so next question from Road Dog. How do you motivate, hang on a minute, how do you motivate a business owner who has made it and is not motivated by money? There we go. Okay, so not motivated by money. Okay. Firstly, people don't magically turn off their achievement button. The person, has made it would dictate that they have made some money. They've achieved a lot. I just don't know that you can turn off that achievement button. The person that managed to get to, I'm going to say, $10 million of revenues or $10 million of net worth or $5 million of net worth and feels very, very comfortable, doesn't one day just turn it off and start gardening, right? Generally, it's just not happening. So people are primarily motivated by one of four things. It's money, status, relationships, freedom. Right. So money, status, relationships, freedom. Most entrepreneurs you are going to find by a landslide are going to be status and freedom. At the same time, many relationships, and some are driven by money, the red Ferrari. And by the way, so it's not like being driven by one or the other is like right or wrong or good or bad. It's just whichever one motivates you, and that's fine. But you need to, if I want to motivate somebody, I need to know what motivates them. Right. That's foundation of everything here. So again, status and freedom would be far and away the ones that I would dare say that you're going to. Like if you go back 1,000 years, it was the person that had the most status who was able to make the most. And like they didn't have bank accounts and whatnot back then. Sure, you know that, right? So again, the status was, the person that was able to make the most, right? So isn't it interesting? Like in this day and age, we've got these billionaires, right? Let's just go Ray Dalio, and so many others, but they make all this money and then they start running around on the podcast tour. And by the way, I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that is, bad. Certainly it's not good. It's not bad. It's not quite anything, but I can tell you that it is somewhat consistent, right? The Think Shark Tank and the others, like they go on the podcast tour and then they write a book or they fight to get on the New York Times bestseller list with their new book, right? Or they start the YouTube channel. They start, getting interviewed left, right, and center. They literally apply to go on to the next business show. Think Shark Tank, right? Or they buy newspapers like the Washington Post, or they buy social media platforms like Twitter, right? It is a status play on steroids, a power play, but is a status play all day long. And at the foundation, of being successful is status, right? The money and the net worth is just symbolism. It's just symbolic of that higher level of status, right? Like, so back in the day, they were mating, and then today they're buying airplanes and, sky, penthouses and skyscrapers and that sort of thing. So, um, I tell you something else. And I think this is kind of super interesting, but like, so tens of thousands of people were interviewed. It might have been thousands, but I'm pretty sure this was a large study, right? And they were interviewed, and what they found is that whether or not people had 1,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million, right? So they were asking the question, they all answered the same, that they just need 3 times what they currently have, to be happy or to quote unquote have made it, right? And I'm pretty sure those with higher levels of wealth, like over $15 million, described it as like, you know, this was the point of arrival, right? Like that's what they were looking to do. And then the others were thinking that they would be able to, stop working at that point, right? Okay, translation to that, whatever they had, they felt like multiple, no, they didn't feel, they said clearly and, directly that they needed to triple where they were currently at in order to be satisfied, in order to be happy, in order to feel like they had quote unquote made it, right? Translation, the goalposts just keep bloody moving, right? And I therefore can't encourage you enough. I can't encourage you enough with your clients. How do you combat the goalpost for moving? Is that you create rules. You got to create some rules for yourself in the game, as in pick a number and let's use $10 million for the sake of the argument. And it might be five and it might be three and it might be one. And that's the number is irrelevant. But what is highly relevant is the number. I'm going to say 10 million and then the time frame. And if you put it too far out, like 10 years, then it's not motivating enough, right? So you've got to use time as a tool as opposed to just a resource. You got to use it as a tool. And the way that you use it as a tool is to create urgency. So therefore, if we say $10 million and we put a 24-month, 2 or 3 year time horizon, no further out, I don't think, than 3 years. Otherwise, again, I don't think you're using time as a tool because I don't think there's urgency attached to anything over that. Right. And again, that might be a little bit different for you than for me and then somebody else. But at the end of the day, you got to create those rules. And then two things, you got to create the number and you got to create the time frame. And once you get there, you agree that you have arrived, that you have won. And what I don't want you to do, and what you don't want your clients to do, is to get there and then say, yeah, okay, yeah, no, this number times 3. Right. And it's just ridiculously common. Well, it's not ridiculously common that, the study literally and clearly stated. And it was kind of mind boggling that a huge majority, let's call it 80%, were using the number 3 times as much. Right. But let me tell you, in order to motivate somebody, it's kind of what I'm answering here. In order to motivate someone, you must first know what motivates them. Right. So the person who has made a lot of money and is genuinely no longer motivated by money, and I wouldn't just be taking first glance as an agreement that they've actually made it, that money is no longer something that they're working towards, and they are not the individual that I'm describing where they want to multiply it by 3. But let's assume they do. And they really have created those goalposts. They put them firmly in the ground. They've got there. They're happy. And that's not the motivating force. Then I would say status. Okay. And then that becomes the book, that becomes the podcast, that becomes the YouTube, that becomes the YouTube series or the movie or whatever it is that they're looking, whatever it's sexy to them. Right. But helping to achieve it. And, so you need to know what motivates them, in order to motivate them. So I would just say like, okay, so Money, I think you would agree that this can be one of those things like politics and like AI, as I said earlier, it can be rather, heated. It's like I did these AI predictions last week and, just talked about some industries that I think are going to die off and some that are going to, stand for significantly longer period of time. And again, some people agreed with me and some people definitely didn't agree with me. And that is okay, right? But the answer is that and the truth is, that the experts don't know, I don't know, you don't know, and the AI expert on Facebook absolutely does not, right? Like the 1700s, what do we have? The agricultural age, and then we had the industrial age, it's like the machines that made the wealth. And then there was the distribution age, where like, the outlets and the molds, equaled wealth. And then there was the information age. And now guess what? We're moving into the AI age. So what do you got to do? What do you got to do with your clients? Where do you need to move them? If they want status, they want more money, they want to be able to triple that number they've got. They just got to not get intimidated, not get thrown off by AI, but they need to move forward step by step ferociously. Um, and if they're done with money, I would dare say that, you'd be moving and freedom, by the way, I didn't say that, like freedom is also a big one where they move from very comfortable that now they want to be able to travel the world. They want to be able to live in an RV. They want to be able to move to where their kids are. They want to be able to move to where their grandkids are, right? That sort of thing. So at the end of the day, though, I guess if you don't know what motivates them, you're not going to be able to motivate them. But be very, very careful for somebody that says, "Oh, I'm not motivated by money," taking that at first glance and to be the truth, because I think you're going to find that it's more likely that they fall into the category of somebody who wants to triple what they currently have, right? So, okay, last question. Let's open my phone here. Best networking tip for going to places like the chamber, BN/BNI groups to convert clients in the room. What does it say? Best networking tip for networking, the best networking tip for going to places like the chamber, BNI, etc. Okay, so here's my answer. It's one word. It's charisma. Um, people people want to be around charismatic people. No, that's not a surprise, right? And again, the science would kind of back that up. If you've ever read The Game, it's a book by Neil Strauss, and there's a really, really good chance you haven't, but I got to tell you, it's absolutely awesome. And basically, let me just break the news to you. Neil, so in the movie, it's basically about a pickup expert, right? So he's like a master at going to the bar and meeting girls and then helping others go to the bar and meet girls, right? But really, the book is like the greatest sales book ever. And I gave it to my nephew, and he just said, "Oh my gosh, this thing was totally life changing." If you've got a teenager, I highly, highly recommend it. And I think they'll thank you. But you know what? You find out. Maybe get the book and check it out for yourself. Make sure you approve. But it's not nothing funky, and it's a hell of a book. And again, if you got a teenager, they might enjoy it. And by the way, I think both boys and girls, right? But it's certainly targeted the boys. But I think that it could be powerful for all teenagers, in my opinion. I'll leave that one with you, right? But let me tell you this: when you walk up to someone at a networking function, it's exactly the same as walking up to someone at a bar and trying to get a date, right? There's like that initial judgment period, like that first 5 seconds, and it really, really matters, right? But there's two approaches that you can take, two approaches that people take. And one is that I didn't get that magnetic feeling instantly. And what do? You walk away. And then there's the other guy that doesn't get the warm and fuzzies straight away, and he just rides it out. He sticks with it. And then all of a sudden, guess what? He gets over the hump, and all of a sudden he's got her laughing, and he leaves with the phone number, right? Translation, look, conviction, confidence. It's absolutely huge in that dynamic. I've said many, many a times, what's a superpower of sitting with a business owner and converting them? Conviction, confidence all day long, twice on Sunday. Remember, your persistence is the measure of your self-esteem, right? So are you willing to stay in that conversation a little bit longer, right? Like again, you meet the business owner, you don't get the warm and fuzzies, and what do? You potentially bail out a little bit quicker. What if you stuck with it a little bit and kind of used a little bit of magic, right? And what would I define as magic? What would I call magic if I was networking? I'll tell you the opposite of magic, and that's that so many people go to networking like type events and they've got these boring vanilla habits, right? People are like crazy predictable. So like on a dating app, I haven't had a dating app in like I've been with my wife for 20 years. But I have no idea. I don't need to go on a dating app to know that the message start with like, hey, right? Or it's at the bar. Do you come here often? Or it's at college. What's your major? Or it's at the networking group. Oh, how long have you been a member of XYZ? All right. So to move the needle a little bit for yourself in a very positive direction, all you need to do is have like a non-boring opening line, right? So like rather than me walking in and saying like, hey, I'm Karl, how are you doing? Right. In a kind of coy, kind of unconfident, non-charismatic way, I walk up and say, hey, I'm Karl Bryan. I don't think I've met you yet. Questioning like the surprise, right? Well, like think about that line. Like, hey, I'm Karl Bryan. I don't think we've met yet, right? Doesn't that give the message that like I know people and that maybe I'm a somewhat important person in this room and that other people know me and should know me and I could introduce them to people and people are getting introduced to me? Like, does it give a little bit of an air of, like I've been here before, I've got a little bit of confidence. And by the way, you do that at a house party, you do that at a bar, you do that at a lounge, you do it at a networking function, an office, your wife's office party, your husband's office party, etc. And the other thing, like as far as being charismatic and like, body language, you've got to move your arms from your side, right? So your elbows locked up against your body is incredibly weak body language. And then, by the way, it's insanely common in rooms with something like business networking going on. So what do? You got to open yourself up, right? You got to get your elbows away from your body. But now you don't take up their space, but what you do is you fill up your own, right? So like confidently gesturing with my arms extended, right? It's going to make me look more dynamic. You do that, it's going to make you look dynamic. You do that, it's also going to allow you to speak louder, right? Guess what? That's more dynamic is louder, better than quieter. And the answer is absolutely not too loud. You don't want to overdo this stuff by any stretch of the imagination, right? And the other thing that I would do is I would think about giving out a genuine compliment, right? So there's like a big guy that's like clearly been to the gym, like multiple times this week. I go up, shake his hand. It looks like you've been to the gym this morning, right? Or there's a pretty woman, right? Look down at her shoes. There's a pretty good chance that a beautiful woman's going to be wearing some pretty cool shoes. I compliment your shoes, right? There's a well-dressed guy. Ooh, I like that suit. You look sharp. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like but don't do it if it's not sincere and don't do it like in a lame way, right? And like two things about networking, you got to be interesting and you got to be interested. Said that many a times on the podcast over the past, right? People will be drawn to that. And remember, don't listen to respond. You got to listen to listen, right? What are the most, the three most interesting things about you? Right? Make sure that you get those out early and get them out with everyone you meet, right? If you meet 5 people and you think that you don't want to say the same thing over and over again, that's a error on steroids, right? You want to say what are the 3 most important things about you? You used to live in India, you did a mission, you built a big company, you exited a business, a client of yours went from 500 grand to 10 million. You've traveled the world, you've been to 50 countries. You spent over $500,000 on Facebook ads. You let your parents move in with you and your wife and your family to look after them. You have a famous friend. Maybe you support a charity that you're passionate about. Look, I don't know. Make a list of I don't know. What are the 3 most important or most interesting things about you? And I would be getting those out when I'm networking because again, people want to be. They want to work with and they want to speak with people who are interesting, right? And speaking with them and then, listening to listen. One of the things you also want to do is you want to look into their eyes and you want to do so that you can see the color. Do they have blue eyes? Do they have brown eyes? Do they have hazel eyes, etc. Right? Don't overdo it, right? If you have too much of an intense, crazy stare, it can kind of scare them. That's not what I'm talking about. That is not charismatic. That is the polar opposite. But you look at them and you got to look at them close enough and tight enough that you can tell the color of their eyes. That's going to give you a connection. And also, like, don't get distracted. Somebody's walking by. How many times you've been speaking to somebody and something, new, somebody walks by and all of a sudden they give them a glance, right? Or there's a coffee cup that clangs across the room and they have a look, right? Very lame, very, rapport, very, very important. If you want to connect with somebody, breaks rapport instantly, right? Like that person is your only priority while you talk to them, right? The gift that you want to give them, you want to give them the gift of your presence. And I got to tell you, it's so rare to do. And by the way, Tony Robbins, Brendan Bouchard, these types of guys who've obviously been very, very successful financially in our coaching world. Look, I can tell you that the greatest gift that they give you and what they're really, really good at, what we will call their superpower, and people will tell you this, when they have a conversation with you, they make you feel like you are the only person in the room, despite the fact that there's, if you're in a room with Tony Robbins, there's a good chance there's at least 1,000 people in that room, certainly a dozen. Well, when he's speaking to you, he won't speak to you for long, and he will give you his gift of his presence for a short period of time, and you will be the only person in the world to him in that moment. It's very, very powerful and like literally, literally a superpower. And by the way, how do you give presence? Um, okay, so this might sound funky, right? This might even like, so you look into their soul. Okay. Yes, you heard me, right? Look into their soul and say, I am going to change this person's life in an insanely positive way. And the way that I'm going to use it is I'm going to use their business as the vehicle to do so. Right. And if you want an example of that, so Tony Robbins, when he does Date with Destiny, he does this exercise where he gets a single guy and a single girl to come up on stage. Right. And as an exercise, he gets the guy to introduce himself to the woman. He makes sure that they don't know each other before they get up on stage. Right. Well, normally a lot of people looking and whatnot, and her reaction is a little bit like, and this particular example, that time that I've been to Date with Destiny. I've seen Tony Robbins, multiple times in multiple countries, etc. Right. So I've seen this exercise. So anyway, so there's one time that I'm thinking of. So he takes this guy and he introduces them, and she's like, okay, like she's like a little bit of a smile, but there's no chemistry. No, there's no electricity, right? And you know what I mean when I say electricity, because you can feel it, right? You see it. You can literally feel it from the audience. Well, Tony Robbins takes this guy away after he introduced himself to the girl and got a bit of an average reaction. And he takes him away, like, 8 feet from the girl, and he whispers in his ear. And what does he say? He says, I want you to reintroduce yourself, but this time look and see the color of her eyes with a look of intensity. And I want you to look into her soul. And I want you to say to her, I am going to protect you. I am going to care for you. I am going to have children with you. And I'm going to protect your soul for eternity. You will never have to worry about a thing with me as your protector. Do that with your eyes. So he basically says, do that with your eyes first, and then reintroduce yourself, right? Well, he comes over, right? And everybody's like, what's going to go on? Like, what did Tony Robbins just whisper in the whisper in the guy's ear? And he does it. He reintroduces himself in that way. And honestly, the difference was mesmerizing. She kind of melted and got into that really girly feminine, started touching her hair. And clearly she was very, very, she was attracted to that approach. And without doubt, there was again that electricity. You could feel it. You could see it. You could feel it. And it was kind of wild, right? So anyway, so that might be a little bit over the top, by the way. We'll see what you feel comfortable with. But, and is there anything else? I'm going to a networking because, again, networking is, you're one person away from all your hopes and dreams coming true. Okay. How are you going to find that one individual? Let me tell you, networking. So this is not an art. I'm not going to call it a science. It's absolutely an art, but not one that I would not be paying a little bit of attention to. Right. But positioning is maybe one more thing that I'd be thinking about. It's like what I said earlier, like rather than going up and saying, hey, I'm Karl, how are you doing? Or something to that effect. I'm walking up like as though not so much that I'm an authority in the room, especially when I'm not. I would, you got to, make sure that you keep this all in check, because charisma dictates that you understand how to read the room, that you've got a high level of EQ. You've got to be able to, the ultimate hack in sport is not talent, balance, and the ability to kick a ball or throw a ball. It's the ability to read the entire playing field, right? So again, you've got to be able to read the entire playing field as you're walking into the networking function. Um, so, but just by, I don't think there's anything over the top by walking up and saying, hi, my name's Karl Bryan. I don't think that we've met yet, and a little bit of a surprised kind of like, hey, like I'm somebody that you should know. So I think that would give, a higher level of impression. And that's what I'd be doing. But bottom line is, look, you want to be interesting and you want to be interested. Don't listen to respond, listen to listen. When you speak to them, there is only one person in the world while you're talking to them. And when you look into their eye, like a level of intensity, but not too much intensity, again, read it. Don't be weird, because that's not charismatic, right? May or may not have been guilty of that at different times in my life, by the way. It's okay. But, like look into their eyes to the point where you can see the eye color, and that will give you the connection. But again, that doesn't mean that you stare into their eyes for elongated periods of time. Again, that would be weird. That would be the opposite of what you're trying to do. But do give them your undivided attention. Look into their eyes. Give them that gift of your presence, so that there's a clinging or somebody walks by that does not distract you in any way. Because if it does, it will break the rapport right away. And I would dare say that that's probably a bad thing. And again, you are one person, you are one contact, from everything all of a sudden working out for you. Okay, you know what? One last question. Road Dog's got it here, so I'm going to answer it. Um, Hang on a sec. Someone asked about your comment recently that it's not the strong that survive, it's the most adaptable. Give me an example of a business being adaptable. Oh, there you go. Okay. Yes, I would agree with that. It is not the strong that survive. It's the most adaptable. By the way, that is a famous quote, and I do not know who said it, but it was many, many years ago. I would say, so the need for certainty is how I follow that up, is a bit of a killer for many. And it's been a bit of a staple in the coaching industry for a long time. And I dare say that it hasn't helped many. Why? Because we live in such an uncertain world. And again, think of the way I started the podcast today, talking about AI and some of the feedback and some people's thoughts, right? Like, never have we had a more uncertain world than we do now, right? Frankly, it's just always been that way if you really think about it. I mean, my gosh, we just got through a pandemic not that long ago, right? Like, I know I spoke to a VC recently, a venture capitalist, and he said to me, he goes, Karl, what did he say? He goes, we don't invest in companies. We invest in inevitabilities, right? And I'm like, and by the way, doesn't, he's not pretending like he gets it right, but that's certainly what he's looking to achieve, right? So he's trying to invest in something that is what he would describe as inevitable, right? Um, I think Wayne Gretzky actually says that very well, where he always said that he didn't skate to the puck, he skates to where the puck is going. And it's like, think of like we're talking about AI and like Facebook, Zuckerberg, they're taking over and spending billions to create, or attempting to take over, by the way, and creating billions on AI, more specifically artificial super intelligent is what they're working towards, right? So there's artificial general intelligent, which is like human level intelligence. Let's call it like genius human level intelligent when done properly. And the machine learning is really kicked in and it's learned and learned and learned, right? So human level intelligence, let's say. And then there's ASI, artificial super intelligent, which is like a step above, where the machine becomes smarter than its masters. And who is masters? That's you and me. So a little bit concerning, by the way, that Zuck is working on this stuff. But anyway, so that's kind of like where they're going. At Zuck specifically, what's he working on? Things like eyewear. It already got them out. And the whole idea behind these glasses is that you wear them and then it makes you smarter, right? Like AI, if you're the worst person in the world using AI, it's going to add 10 to 15 IQ points. If you've got any clue whatsoever, I'm going to dare say that it's adding 25. And if you've got some chops and you've been practicing I think the experts will tell you that you'll be able to, add 40 points to your IQ by getting good at using AI. Remember, not using it as a vehicle, but using it as gasoline, as in to make you smarter. It is not the foundation of your intelligence, but it is designed to take your intelligence and your critical thinking skills, and your questions to next level, so you can really, you know what I mean? You can knock this up. Why do you want to do that? Look, smart people build big things, right? A lot of people talk about the school of hard knocks and how powerful it is. And quite frankly, it is. And I well and truly come from this school of hard knocks, right? I do not have some fancy education. I barely got out of high school. But I'll tell you this, that smart people build big things. So I would encourage you to be smart. What did I just say about AI? What is smart? Like it is intelligence. It's not all about IQ. There's EQ and much other stuff that goes into it. But at the end of the day, it gives you the ability to be significantly smarter. Um, so what's Zuck doing, with, going all in on artificial intelligence, et cetera? He's going to where the puck is going, obviously, right? And again, specifically towards superintelligence, that he believes that he can win the race to that. And keep in mind that Zuckerberg thought virtual reality was going to take off, right? And he lost $100 billion all day long, twice on Sunday on the undertaking. In fact, it's significantly more than that, right? But did he let that lose his confidence? Did he let that, change things for him? Did he, decide, oh, like I failed at this, so I'm not going to go after artificial intelligence? And the answer is absolutely not. Remember, persistence is a measure. Your persistence is a measure of your self-esteem, right? Clearly, the guy's got some self-esteem. He's doing pretty well. But anyway, so that's like, adaptable. I don't know if that's the best example of the adaptable, but look, they spent over $100 billion on virtual reality and have kind of taken a bit of a left turn. I know, like McDonald's, who they've always been really, really good at lunch and dinner. Um, but coffee is such a moneymaker. But no one came into McDonald's for breakfast, right? They wanted to be able to get a piece of that action. What do they do? In California, they launched a little thing called the McMuffin to see how it would do. Guess what? Did well, rolled it out across the country. And now they sell, I don't know what it is, but it's a crazy number, but it's like 1 million egg McMuffins a day, right? A day. And by the way, guess what? They also sell a ton of coffee, and they make an absolute fortune off of that coffee that they sell, right? So again, they got massive margins. So they started small in California and then kind of rolled it out. So I guess I could call that, being adaptable. And Uber did the same thing. They started in San Francisco, just a little small limo service initially, and they adjusted and adapted, changed things on the fly. They got it right. What do? They expanded into other markets, and apparently it's going pretty good. But again, Uber for sure, Netflix. So that Netflix was taking off, and then the studios realized this. And what do? The studios started holding back their best content, right? Do you remember those days where you couldn't get anything half decent on Netflix? You couldn't stream it. Well, what do? Netflix started creating their own shows. And truthfully, now they're a super player in the content creation space. I would say if the studios didn't hold back their content, they would have never adapted in that way. They would have never gone in that direction. Actually, lesser known, Lego, you may or may not, like, Lego was on, you could imagine, look, Lego were getting hammered because kids don't want to build blocks in this day and age. They want screens, right? Well, Lego partnered with Star Wars and Harry Potter, and these were like mega sellers on steroids. They're doing like $10 billion of Lego sales of the back of, that adjustment, that kind of them adapting their business. Basically, they're doing billions of dollars of trade as an example of that partnership. Again, I don't think that partnership comes to fruition if the business isn't taken a solid punch in the jaw, right? So again, they adapted, right? Like, I look back in the day, I saw business coaches and frankly business owners just totally obsessed with revenue. They're all trying to hit the financial milestone, specifically $1 million, right? 96% don't get to $1 million. So guess what the business owners are thinking? I want to get to 1 million. I want to get to 1 million. I say, what do you want? They say, I want to get to 1 million, right? And then once they get to 1 million, they want to get to 3 million. They get to 3 million. They want to get to 10 million, etc. But all thinking gross revenues, right? And I saw the industry. Everybody was jumping up and down, singing Kumbaya, clapping their hands, yelling yes, yelling yes. And I didn't see anybody in the space. Think Jay Abraham, think Dan Kennedy, think Tony Robbins. Nobody was talking profit, profit, profit. And I knew that, profit's the domino that knocks over all the other dominoes. So guess what? I built some software. I didn't call it revenue acceleration software. I called it profit acceleration software. Remember, like small incremental change in multiple areas, right? So the aggregation of marginal gains, basically you get a compounding financial result without the use of time, right? Bingo, bango, bongo. The financial returns, when done properly, and it's pretty easy to do properly because, again, there's 12 specific areas. Think about it as railroad tracks. You keep the business owner on the railroad tracks, right? They want to take you into the weeds and they want to talk about the challenges and the staffing issues and the marital issues and the health issues and this issue, that issue, and every damn issue. Keep them on the railroad tracks for the first 3 to 6 months and say, look, I got it, but can we get this dialed in? Because remember, profit is the domino that knocks over all the other dominoes. And you do it. And I got to tell you, and by the way, it's all backed up with math. At the end of the day, it's like, like 80-20. Like 80-20 isn't an opinion. It's not something that I think. It's not something that you think. It's not something that could work with your clients. It is a universal principle that you, nor I, nor your client are ever getting away from, right? Well, guess what? The aggregation of marginal gains and small incremental changes in multiple areas simultaneously, giving you that compounding financial return without the use of time, it's just math. It's not like an opinion. It's not something that I think can work. It's absolutely math. And you just make small, 2, 3, 4% improvements in 12 areas simultaneously. And the worst business, frankly, with the worst revenues and very poor gross profit margins and net profit margins can become wildly more profitable. Anyways, that would be an example. But where do they come from? I looked at the industry. I looked at the top dogs, and I didn't see anybody going profit, profit, profit. It was always about, again, marketing and marketing messages, which, by the way, all very, very important. Don't want to take anything away from anybody. And some folks have done some unbelievable work in this industry to blaze a very cool path that I was the benefactor to, can slide in behind, let's say. But I got to tell you, but nobody was screaming profit, 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 profit. And that's what we did. That's the software we created. And I got to tell you that it is good, but it all comes from adaptability. So also let's finish this off again. AI, which, by the way, is getting integrated into our profit acceleration software. I am so far down that AI rabbit hole. You've got absolutely no idea. We did a huge upgrade on Tuesday, and literally Tuesday afternoon, we had already improved. The integration and made some changes straight off the back of some feedback. But anyway, so we're working. Look, there's adaptability on steroids, and it is something that it is gasoline. It doesn't replace the software. It is gasoline for the software. And then when you're working with a client, it doesn't replace the relationship with your client. It speeds up. It's turbo between you and your client, so everything can get done faster. Everything can be done in a more meaningful way. Everything can be done in a simpler, easier way. Right. So again, just think integration all day long and twice on Sunday. So again, as far as being adaptable, that is one where you need to be adaptable. You may be a little bit overwhelmed or a little bit like, oh my gosh, where is this world going? Where is AI going? Gosh, it moves so fast. You go to your Facebook feed and all you hear about are people, ChatGPT 5 just came out and here's the game-changing moves, et cetera, et cetera. And then, by the way, the next post will tell you that, ChatGPT 5 sucks and they want to bring back 4 and that, Sam and the boys have let everybody down once again, blah, 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 blah. Look, again, noise. I don't want to say ignore it because you should educate yourself at a high level, but at the same time, don't let it preoccupy you because, again, they're trying to get your attention. They're trying to get your focus. So they can get your hand on your wallet. Be a little bit cautious with that one. Use AI as gasoline for your business, gasoline for your lead generation, gasoline for your client relationship, gasoline for your referrals, etc. So anywho, that is all I got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. An absolute pleasure here. That's it for me. God bless. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Karl Bryan built Profit Acceleration Software 2.0. So as a business coach, you'll never again have to worry about working with business owners that can't afford your high-end coaching fees. Check us out at focused.com.